Hey there, fellowship family. Welcome to your one-stop shop for all things church life. I'm Mark Francis, once again, your host for today. This is the final episode of our Overflow podcast series, and I'm excited to hear from another couple here in the church. And just a quick recap of where we've been. If you've listened to any of the episodes over the last couple of months, you'll realize that we have been focusing on the word overflow and how that is meant to display God's love to others around us, because God has poured out his love to us first and foremost. And so how can we then show that to others? And it starts in the home. We had a couple of episodes where we interviewed people for family life scenarios. We then also moved on into the local church, where we got a chance to hear how people have been showing one another's here amongst ourselves at FBC. We're able to also hear from some of our global church partners. It's been exciting to hear from them as they were here in person for our Global Church Week. And now lately, the last couple of episodes, we're looking outward, which falls right in line with our sermon series of how we're wrapping up leading into Thanksgiving. By the way, happy Thanksgiving, everyone. That is a long introduction, but I have people with me that I want to introduce, and it's exciting. I'm going to look over here to my left. You're all watching at home right. We have Mark and Leanne Lynch. How are you guys?
We're great.
We're laughing. You love being here, don't you?
I do.
This is amazing.
I do, especially with you and with John Avery.
We have John Avery, pastor of Family Life over here, and thanks for being back with us, John.
Yeah, thank you.
And
I have enjoyed, if I can just say,
fire away.
The podcasts.
Good.
From this focus.
I've been meaning to talk to you about that, and so I'll put you on the fly here. I mean, what have you gleaned here if you're listening to all these podcasts?
Well, number one, I don't want to embarrass you, but I just want to say that you do a great job.
Yes.
I appreciate you ask good questions and you keep it flowing.
Good.
Overflow.
Whatever
you want to say.
Yeah.
No, I have just appreciated being able to hear different people come in and share what God's doing and how they've been encouraged or what they have been applying in their own life. And
that is the benefit of having this platform where we can just talk freely, openly. Nobody's editing anything. We could just get a chance to talk off the cuff of what is going on in people's lives here at the church. And it's called the Fellowship Family Podcast for a reason, so we can actually get a chance to know people who go to the church. So Lynch's, we get a chance to know you today.
Great.
Just ballpark, just give us, I don't know why I say ballpark, but just give us a summary of who you guys are, maybe even how long you've been together. Tell us about your family.
Okay.
Give us a little bit of background of who the Lynches are.
Leanne, just interrupt me if I'm wrong. 28 years we've been married.
Yeah.
We have 4 kids. The oldest is 23, the youngest is 14, 3 girls and a boy. We've been coming, I think, to fellowship probably maybe 11, 12 years, something like that. And so I'm involved in different stuff at the church. Been working with this guy at youth group before he got promoted.
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 Yeah.
Promoted. Level. Level.
Yeah, no, I think it's a demo. It's a promotion because, dealing with the youth, that is that is special.
So that is special.
Thank you for doing
that. Is true.
Yeah.
Working with the youth. So I haven't, been in the youth, but we've been different areas we've been involved in the church.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Neat.
And so did I miss anything?
No.
Been in Winchester the same. We got married and moved to Winchester, the next week.
Just about.
Really?
From Williamsburg. I think you're from Williamsburg.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So Williamsburg, she went to school at Williamsburg, and so we got married one day and then moved the next.
Well, not
William
one
and
day,
Mary.
not the next, but we
Yeah.
Maybe a honeymoon in between.
We did a honeymoon in between,
We
and
did.
then it was truly 2 weeks later.
Good. Okay.
We moved here.
Yeah.
Neat.
It was crazy.
Neat. So just tell us about what you do for living, how you guys put food on the table. What do you do, Mark?
Well, Leanne, we have the 4 kids. Leanne's homeschooled them all. So, so that's a full-time job in doing that. And I work as a mortgage lender in town and been doing that since I was a wee baby.
Wow.
Yeah. Yes. So
you came out of the womb talking about numbers and finances and getting loans for people.
Exactly. It is pretty impressive. My mom was impressed.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to hear about you guys and what you do, because as I introduced this segment in this episode, we're talking about getting outside of our walls. And so to me, before we even hear how you guys share God's love outside of the walls, I think it's first and foremost important to hear your story, to hear, what what has God shown you over the years? First and foremost, how did you come to find Christ? Because that's part of your story, and that's part of then leading into, okay, how do I share that with others? So I'll look at, each of you guys have a story. So I'll let one of you guys go first. Mark, you're looking at me, so
Okay, all right.
I'll let you go first.
I got it.
Just share how you.
We want to make sure we don't get the teacher.
Yeah, how'd you came to faith?
I grew up in the Catholic Church, so I've always went there and went to Mass, sometimes 7 days a week, during Lent. That's what they would go. And really come to know Christ, actually, since coming here. I had one of the pastors, John Morrison, sat with me for over a year going through the book of Romans. And he just showed me the way. I mean, he showed me exactly what Christ did for me, as well as he did for everyone in this room. And that was pretty much my story. I mean, you knew Christ, but you didn't know what he did and how it was in relationship to me. And then I grew even deeper through Bible Study Fellowship, BSF, which actually meets at this church.
Yeah.
The church opens the doors up to many different programs, and one of them is BSF.
It's on Monday nights.
It's on Monday nights, for men and women to both meet at this church. And it was really there that you go into all the scriptures and it really go deep, really good. And she did it way before me. So she introduced me to BSF. And so that's how it really grown in Christ, knowing Christ and then growing in Christ.
But it's neat that you say that coming out of a Catholic background and a Catholic faith to then attending Fellowship Bible Church. That's a pretty stark contrast.
It is.
What was the big change in your minds that allowed you to click with, okay, that's my moment of coming to faith and realizing that Christ died for me?
Yeah. So I think crisis, life, moments of times that where God brings you to your knees. And then you say, wait a second, this isn't all about Mark Lynch. So what is it about then? And that's when I think John Morrison came alongside. And I think that's important, this overflow type theme that you've been doing over this last month, is that John showed, he took time every day. I mean, every week we'd go to Panera Bread and we'd open up our Bibles and we'd go ahead and read scripture. And he'd give me homework, I'd have to do. But I think the moment of time that really happens is sometimes you hit rock bottom and you realize that you need something is there more than yourself.
John, I know that's a passion of yours, of this discipleship idea. You shared on episodes in the past, but what is the value of one-on-one like that, of what John Morrison was able to do with Mark?
Yeah. One of my favorite verses is 1 Thessalonians 2:8. And whenever I say that, I start and then I forget it, but I'll paraphrase it. But he says, we not only imparted the gospel of God, but we imparted our very lives as well, because you had become very dear to us. And that's, it's life on life, and it's sharing what God has done in your own life, and you're able to share the truth with others. It's just a wonderful truth and love. If you look through the scriptures, it's just, they're coupled together. And again, it's a person. It's person on person. God can reveal himself in many ways, but to have somebody help walk you through understanding what the gospel is, I think can open up lives.
Morrison and I had so many similarities, him coming out of the Catholic background too, and him being from a large family. So it's very, very similar. I think, he could understand where I was coming from, where a lot of other people maybe didn't understand. Yeah. So that was neat, right?
Yeah, totally.
I mean, John was great.
Leanne, how about you?
Yeah,
what's your story?
Similar in that I grew up in a home that was Protestant, went to church every Sunday. But I don't know, I didn't have a Bible, and we certainly never opened it in church, which is ironic to say. At least the congregants didn't. And there was no, you didn't even say Jesus' name. You just, at least I have no memory of ever saying it. And so I started BSF in, I think, 96. And I remember Rosemary Spence was the leader, the group leader, or more than, she was the leader, teaching leader. And so she came to interview me for leadership. I'm thinking, at first I have no business in leadership, but she said to me, do you have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ? And I can't even say the word. Of course I have a personal relationship, not even knowing what a personal relationship is.
With him.
Oh my gosh. And so, a month or two into that study, and you can't not have a personal relationship with Jesus going through that study. And God just got hold of my heart. And I just said, Lord, show me that you are who you say you are, and help me to believe. And It was amazing. And it is amazing because it's a life process. It's not that immediate thing. Although I do have stories of immediacy where he answered incredible prayers that are those major, like you build the stone altar for because of how he showed himself. So because we both grew up in a church, we got married and we went to church. And we went to a Lutheran church for 10 years, blending our Protestant Catholic background, Anglican for a little bit, and then just like ended up kind of in the spiritual hospital, needing help, and landed here and have been pieced back together and grateful.
So would you say that those stories were similar time frames? Like where were your stories together when, Mark, you kind of had that John Morrison moment, and Leanne, you had a BSF moment?
We were like 10 years apart.
Okay.
Because I was in leadership in BSF for at least 8 years, I think, and homeschooling. And we were, just living the life of young children, homeschooling, working hard. And you realize your lives are really going in not the right direction, not the direction that is God honoring the way you want them to go. And had a little wake up, and more than a little wake up, I had a really big wake up and realized we need help.
Yeah.
So
I'm curious of like how you saw those changes impact your family and your family life and your children.
Yeah. It's a really good question.
Yeah. I think, here a little, there a little, I think that's where it happens. You just take one small step and trust God. And that's over and over and over again. And I mean, instead of going the way of self, you go the way of what Jesus Christ is looking for you to do. I mean, one step at a time, right?
Yeah. When we started coming, our oldest was 13, and our two oldest girls, who are 18 months apart, they just plugged right into the youth group, plugged into the trips, the jam and SEMP, and all those different things that were offered. And missionary trips, went to China a couple of times, just had rich experiences. And the Bible was real to them, and their prayers were real, and their relationship was real. And our little ones just grew up in the church, they grew up here and talking about God all the time. But at the same time, they're watching us kind of stumble and fall as we're piecing things and putting our lives before the Lord, changing bad habits into good habits to honor God. So life's messy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing.
And you have people stepping into it, like Morrison or Rosemary Spence, they step into your life.
And nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, churches is filled with imperfect people who are putting their faith in the perfect person.
Absolutely.
And so, we're not propping anybody up on a pedestal when you come and talk to us, but it's exciting to hear God work in your own personal lives with your family, through discipleship, through the body of Christ, to bring you to a place now. Like, so how have you seen, God work in your lives over these last 10, 15 years to where you are starting to impart these ideas to other people?
Can I insert something to that I think is related? We did adult baptism. So we were both baptized as infants.
Yeah.
And we wanted to join the church. We wanted to join the church. So we found tremendous help here, and we wanted to join. And we knew in order to join, we had to do an adult baptism. I think that was a major turning point. It was like nothing I've ever experienced. I mean, humbling doesn't even begin to touch it.
Yeah.
To stand there before and read your testimony, to get wet. I mean, all of that. But
whether through sweat or immersion.
Sure.
But just, to publicly, before people you don't know. And yet, oh my gosh, I mean, this church has been so amazing, because there have been times, I remember there was one time I was just like sobbing in a pew, and I have no idea who the sweet person was behind me. He was like patting me on the back, and I'm probably like shaking. But just, the love that is here, and there's no pretense.
Yeah.
And so that is really cool. Sorry, I needed to add the baptism part.
We just had baptism last night. And we had 5 adults do what you just talked about. And it's such a meaningful time, because it's an opportunity for people to come and hear what God has done, responding to the story of Jesus. And
it's meaningful. Yeah. And so hearing your story, and John, you're sharing how baptism was, just this past Sunday night, and having the sermon share how stories impact people's lives, so then you can share his story to others.
Absolutely.
And that, I think that's ultimately the heart of God, to say, don't just keep it to ourselves.
Right.
He's given us this gift. Okay, how are we then to impart that to other people around us?
And most of our children wanted to do their baptisms later, which is just a fun aside that I think is neat. But sorry, I keep
Neat. No. I love it because, again, that's a public profession of faith. And yeah, you could have had a moment of faith years before that, and that's perfectly okay. But then it's showing that maturity of saying, okay, yeah, this is what God is calling me to do, and this is the right time to do it, and how that's meaningful to your life.
Yeah.
You know when that was and what that experience was like.
Yeah.
And that's encouraging to people who heard your testimony as well.
Yeah.
So once that happens, I think the important thing is to, grow in the grace and knowledge of Jesus Christ. And you don't know that until you just start opening up the Bible. And with you, it's sort of like you stepped out. I remember hearing a story, one of those BSF stories. We were celebrating the retirement of Rosemary and I forget who else, whatever it was, the retirement of them. And then someone stepped up and said, I wasn't even sure if I believed in Christ. And she called me into leadership. And so she came to faith because they called it in. And BSF was an interesting way to do it because I got involved in it and I grew tremendous amounts because it's just rich. It's just rich. And so you just got to, and then they put you in leadership and you're like, I'm very unprepared.
Ill-equipped.
Very ill-equipped. It's not me. And then next thing you know, you're talking to other guys. And you're stepping into their lives that are messy.
But that's what it's like, though. I mean, so that's the kind of the segue here is that we do feel ill-equipped, but yet we're so called to step out and just get into the other people's messy lives, just like our lives are messy.
Yeah. It's
So,
a willing spirit.
Yeah. I mean, are there any stories or any examples that come to mind of how you have engaged others in their messy lives? I mean, without revealing dirt and details, like how have you seen God work through you sharing Christ to others around you?
Well, I mean, everyone's life is messy. Even our life. I mean, people are still mentoring and working with us. Right. So, I guess it's willing to be open. So if you walk into a room full of guys, either whether Sunday morning or at BSF, people are going to come up to you. And then even just a quick saying, tell me your story. I mean, how did you get, we were on a college tour now with our 17-year-old and jokingly, the leader said to the tour guide, to us, ask the tour guide really hard questions, So I said, well, tell me about, how you came to Christ. And
You're at a Christian college.
And she's like, we were engaging it, but it was interesting. She's like, no one's ever asked that to me before. And this is a junior or senior in college, right? So I was like, oh, good. She's like, thanks for asking that question because it helps you know your 2 or 3 minutes, like Carrie said this past weekend. I mean, you'll know your story, but really to listen to their story. Yeah. I mean, people don't really, people think you're a great conversationalist when you don't say 2 words and they're doing all the talking. Like, Mark Lynch, he was so great to talk to. And I'm like, I didn't say anything. You did all the talking, right? So
listening.
Listening
being engaging
really
and hearing what their comments are and responding. Is a little bit of a trained skill, but it takes a little bit of humility to not just blurt out the first thing that comes into your mind at that time to engage somebody and then have the mindset of a spiritual conversation, have the mindset and have those goggles on, as Mark Carey said, also to see others the way God sees them of where is their need, where is their hole in the soul. Right. That's what Mark calls it.
I think when we struggle or stumble, that humility that comes from that removes judgment. And so when you talk with others who might be hurting, instead of maybe feeling judgment or scared, they sense a safety. So to answer that question, people just share.
Yeah.
Maybe because our listening ears are different than they might have been. We might have had, maybe, I don't know if we did or didn't, but sure don't now. So.
Well, we know that you guys have a heart for God and your family has kind of been raised in the church. And here we are in this Christmas season of thinking about Follow the Star that's happening next week. It's a little different because of COVID, so the last couple of years, last year and this year is this driving tour. But go back to years past when you guys have participated in Follow the Star, one of the, the biggest outreach event of Fellowship Bible Church in the year. what did you guys do to engage people around you to show them the gospel and have that heart? Like, share a story or two of what you guys have done to assist in that outreach process of Follow the Star.
Let's clarify you guys.
Okay.
She's got the gift of hospitality.
Okay.
So it wouldn't have been my idea. So I'll let you go ahead and speak.
Well, you were a supporter of it.
Yeah, of course I was a supporter, but I guess, I'm definitely not, although I'd love to see you guys over for dinner, she's the one that would make it all happen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as with most moms and women in the house. But I think the first Follow the Star, we went with a small group of friends and we're so in awe and amazed by the experience. It was one of those things can't keep quiet. And you want to make sure others know about it. So in our homeschool co-op, I just sent out like a large email to maybe 20 families and advertised what Follow the Star was, said, we're going to invite everyone to come back to our house afterward, and we'll just do like a potluck. You can drop off your items before, but we need to meet there an hour before because the line is long and you need to be early.
Right.
So like each year became a little tighter on our stipulations because that line would be forever. And we would get there at least by 4, so we could all get in the first wagon, and then we'd have to be in the first 2 wagons. And that line would be all of our friends waving to one another. They'd be bringing friends. So we'd go through and meet back at the house, and whoever was there first turned the oven on. Like everyone knew what their jobs were, if they had jobs. And we loved if we could have people who didn't go to church,
right? So
that they could have exposure or their children could hear the story. But we didn't limit it to only non-believers or unbelievers. Or we just invited all of our friends, which was the whole group of all various degrees of churchgoers and non-churchgoers. And it was a blast. And we did that for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see, because the story is the story, right? So it's interesting to see people.
Progression. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no. Some people didn't know the story. Is that how Joseph heard? Is that how? I mean, they were like, oh, I thought it was a lightning strike, and I'm scratching my head. Well, where would you have heard that someone got hit by lightning? And so it's just interesting to hear how other people looked at the story and maybe didn't know it all.
Were there really cookies at the end?
Yeah. Well, we did a lot of cookies. Yeah, that was always doing.
And we always baked for that too. But it was neat. I loved each year something new was added. Yeah. So when I think it was the second or the third year, the cross at the end, I feel like was added, and the gospel message was shared. Now, you might have done that, John. I loved it. And then the beginning, I don't remember when the Adam and Eve or creation
adding the creation part
was added. Yeah. But you're getting the whole picture of the Bible. And that evening, it can be life-changing for someone who doesn't know the whole story and is able to hear it. And then to come back to the house with friends and talk about it. Like, what'd you think of that? Or the kids are all talking about it and we're all talking.
Or as Mark said this past week, it could be an after life-changing event.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be somebody accepts Christ that night.
In the moment.
Where you're going to be. Have you ever thought of, that was your question this past sermon. Yeah. Have you ever thought about where you're going to be in the afterlife?
I'm curious. I mean, I've heard Scott Santmeyer give us some questions that are modeling what we could ask people. What did you guys ask people in the past when they came over to your house to kind of pry and stir on the spiritual conversation? I mean, you kind of already shared a couple of them, but what stands out to you?
Sometimes it'd be like, what was new? Like, what surprised you about that? Or what did you think of, when the angels or any different part? I can't honestly think of an exact question, but just an open-ended question that invited conversation. Or even conversation, because it really felt like every year something was added. So talking about, I loved how they added whatever it was. And the live animals were the kids are just so enamored with the live animals.
Of course.
But the effort too, as members, seeing the amount of just devotion and work that goes into pulling off this event. You want to help because you want to be part of that crowd.
Labor of love.
So we did. We acted for a couple of years. Was it a couple or was it just one? I might have only been one.
I do. I remember seeing you dressed up, Mark.
Do we remember who we were?
Yes.
Zacharias?
It was great. It's a great speaking part.
Yeah.
Did it really well.
Anyway, I wish we'd done it more because that was really fun.
Yeah. It was cold. It's cold.
It's cold.
And it's it's fun. It's nice. But so we didn't have people over that weekend.
That was tough because if you are acting in it, you really can't. Sure. That probably is maybe the last time we had people.
But it's a great way to engage your neighbors. Yeah. We always have something right at the church to engage your neighbors. So it's important to to do one of those events.
Yeah, and
it's
it
nice
would
to do.
become an event where friends of ours who had come with us would look forward to it the following year. Are you doing Fall and Star
Yeah,
this
some
year?
of them
Mm.
actually did the same thing. Some
Yes, started branching off.
started saying the same thing. We're
Yep.
gonna do it at their home.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's cool. So now that's a little different. We're not walking around outside. We're staying in cars.
Yeah.
What could you anticipate? What ideas or suggestions? And I've asked this to a couple people already on the podcast here, but I'm curious to get your ideas. What would you do with our current season of Follow the Star, having people drive through and then drive home? So I think the potluck dinner is still an option, but what other kind of ideas would you suggest to engage these conversations after experiencing it?
Yeah. What do you think, John?
I think you could probably do a progressive dinner. Already in your car.
Isn't that
just keep
fun?
going.
Oh, yeah.
Let's keep driving.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Have a meeting spot afterwards.
Leanne has
Yep.
an idea. You have
No,
a-
I was going to say, I think it's all the more important that you have something contact because the car is so impersonal
Yeah.
and it's so isolating.
Mm.
So get out of the car.
Yeah.
So if it's after you've done the car, do go to someone's home so that you can engage and have hot chocolate or, you know, and that's totally appropriate because it is cold or hot tea or whatever. And your own cookies at home.
Sure.
Save some of the cookies there for some of the people and go home for desserts.
What are you doing cookies this year? Right?
But
There's
just
cookies
discuss
this
it.
year.
Cookies this year. Yeah.
And actually, we didn't do so. It was hard for me to figure it out. We didn't do it. We didn't go through Follow the Star last year, so I just didn't see it. So we'll definitely do it this year. We'll figure something out.
You know, I had an idea. Somebody mentioned just be in a van together. You know, we could have a bunch of
that's fun.
buses.
Oh, imagine if you
and somebody with
rented
like
a
a tour guide, a limo. That would be amazing. Yes. The Lynches are fronting that for the whole church. Limos for everyone that you can fit 25 people in. Yeah.
Right.
With the narrator going along as you go. So we see, all right, Follow the Star leadership people. We are now adding potential things for even next year. It's more ideas.
Well, maybe next year we'll be back
back
at
at
the battlefield.
We shall see. Yeah. No telling. Well, just to wrap this up and summarize it, give us one other kind of big takeaway of just why is it important to you? Why is it important to share Christ to others?
Well, I mean, I think Mark said it. Where are you going to be in your afterlife? You know, where are you going to be? I mean, you're doing great in this life, but what does it look like for eternity? I think eternity is a pretty big deal. You're here for, I mean, literally this amount of time.
Yeah.
Your infinity forever. So where are you going to be? Where are you going to spend your time?
And how can you not?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, just the overflow of Christ in our hearts compels us to share. And it's hard. It's hard to share, particularly hard with those closest to you, right? So it's a little easier to invite friends and talk about it, or it's just easier to share. I find that.
At a church event.
At a church event, and let that be the conduit
There.
to just talk about the gospel and what does it mean.
You just mentioned a passage that just look up 2 Corinthians 5:14, for the love of Christ controls us. Other words, compels us, you know, and there's that idea, and it says that one died for all, therefore all died. And he died for all so that they who live might no longer live for themselves, but for him who died and rose again on their behalf. So there's that love of God compelling us to do that. John, I'll ask you the same question. Why? Why is it important?
Well, I think about, this is it's what we're created for. What we're designed to know him. And what a privilege to be able to tell someone else what they're designed for. And I know that there could be resistance from that, but again, the love of Christ, being able to see people the way Jesus sees people, I think is great. And it's an opportunity God has done absolutely everything necessary for a person so that their greatest need can be taken care of, and that is forgiveness. That can be then a relationship with Jesus. Yeah.
And we're called to do it. So not out of obligation, but out of obedience, but out of the motivation to, yes, I want the others around me to enjoy that same grace.
Yeah. And one of the things you'd mentioned some earlier, and I was just thinking about, the when we would go and they would have the people there write letters to friends back home. And it was either you could write a cultivating letter, a planting letter, or a reaping letter. And that,
and these are students,
right?
These
are students,
yes.
Yeah. And so the same kind of thing, maybe you're at a point in a relationship with somebody that you don't feel like you're at that point where you can share the gospel, but you can do things to cultivate that relationship, to in a sense, prepare the heart for planting of the seed of sharing your testimony and then eventually sharing the gospel. So, for example, with our neighbors, we have 5 neighbors. Just this past week, Susan baked banana bread and attached the Follow the Star invitation to it. And some of them have gates and some of them have dogs. And so we put them in their mailbox, and then she texted and said, "Hey, the banana bread's in your mailbox.
Dog's coming in to eat it, right?
Yeah, see what happened to my fingers." And so it's just that's cultivating.
Sure.
And hopefully get to a place where we can plant and actually share truth, and then maybe even then reaping, calling them to respond to what Jesus has done for them. So there's different stages, I guess, or levels so people might be intimidated by saying, "You're telling me to share the gospel right away." No, maybe not. Maybe it's just an invite and they come over for dinner and you just say, "How was it?" And that's all you say this time. Yeah. But then you're just building a relationship.
Building a relationship. And the pressure's not on us that they believe, because the Lord takes care of all of that.
Amen.
Ours is just to be invitational.
Yep, that's good.
It's not up to us.
Well, guys, thank you so much for being here, sharing
Thanks
a little
for
bit of
inviting
your
us.
stories and your heart of what's going on behind the scenes in the Lynch family. John, I'll turn to you because, again, this is the last episode for Overflow. It's wrapping up here this coming weekend in our corporate gatherings. But what have you seen God do in the life of our church because of this series, because of this focus for the last 3 months?
Yeah, the heart, when we were talking about this a year and a half ago and COVID, we just kind of see how things were going and could we do a focus now or maybe not, wait, whatever. But we were just thinking how nice it would be after so much isolation is just raise the value and point people to the reality of our need for one another. Obviously, we need the Lord, but he has made it, he's designed us that we need each other. And he tells us that by all of the many, many, many one another commands, but realizing that it's God who gives us the strength to live out these commands. He never gives us a command that he does not give us the grace to be able to live out. And so it's an overflow. He, as you mentioned, Romans 5:5, he has poured his love into our hearts through the Holy Spirit. And as we get to know him, we overflow with his love to others. We can serve them through different ways. We can and build them up and look for opportunities to encourage them. So that's where the heart of it came. You developed a team and then the creative juices started to flow and came up with different ideas of how this could work itself out. And so we started the whole Overflow with an event, the Water Day. And
that seems so long ago.
It does seem so long ago. It was warm. And so, and that was just a great day. I was there manning one of the inflatables.
Thank you, by the way.
Yeah, sure, making sure people wouldn't die.
Being the bouncer.
The kids, but it was just neat to see parents. I don't know, maybe we had 175 people there, but it's just people interacting, encouraging each other. People were serving one another there, and that was just a neat time to start it up. And then we followed that with a sermon series, and 4 weeks of sermons, and I've heard just really encouraging things. From the sermon series of just talking with people, kind of anecdotal things of how people were blessed. I know that John Morrison did a 2-part message on living at peace with one another. And I just heard some really neat things about people. I heard about a family that doesn't go to our church, but they listen to the sermons and that helped them relate to one another and with having peace with one another.
Which those are still online. So if you missed those, you can check those out.
It's good stuff. Marcy shared an email with me that she got. It said, I just need to say how much I've appreciated the Overflow idea cards fan deck. I don't know who put it together, but it has motivated me to think of others in a much more graceful and humble way. I pray people are taking them and reading them. What a blessing our church is. And that's just these are 20 different one another's of how you can live them out in your family, community group, whatever. We're going to keep them in the home center for a couple more weeks. There's still some available. I do want to say that all the different focuses that we've done a number of them. I don't know, 5 or 6, 7
over at least 3 or 4 years now.
Yeah.
So
and
definitely,
Marcy told me that this is the resource that has been taken the most out of all of our. So it's just really encouraging.
And Marcy works with you.
Yes, she's my administrative assistant, and so she has
great behind the scenes person.
Yes, and she refills everything in the home center when things are missing.
Great.
And so it's just been encouraging that people are taking those. some people signed up for what was it called, dinner or
Guess Who's Coming to Dinner?
Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. And one of the guys told me, actually John Simmons said, we just loved that. We had a great time. They took someone out and then someone took them out.
Right.
And he just really enjoyed that.
Get to know somebody new at church.
Yep. And Susan and I are going out to dinner with somebody next week.
Cool. See, it still continues. Yeah, it's great.
Also had a story of somebody's daughter, a young little girl, so much enjoyed the theme song that you guys wrote. That she was humming it throughout the day.
Yeah.
That first time it was sung, and so
that's impressive.
Kind of neat. Yeah. So it's, that was cool.
Can you sing a few bars?
It's a great song.
I don't sing in public. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Overflowing. There you go.
And just two other thoughts. I mean, there's a lot of, I'm sure, things that, again, just what people have shared with me, and I know that there are other people talking about it, but one of the discipleship group members in one of our discipleship groups said, I appreciated the reminder of loving one another, really not out of obligation, but because of the love we've received from the Lord. We've received forgiveness, kindness, blessings overflowing in us through Christ, and just it's motivated me to want to share with others and connect that.
That's neat to see, again, just stories, hearing feedback to know that, okay, what has been going on behind the scenes and in front of the scenes here at church is making an impact. And that just goes straight to the heart of the mission statement of our church, preparing, deploying dependent disciples who are changing their world as they're being changed by him.
Right. And the idea of the focuses that we've had is just, a lot of it is a reminder. We all need reminder. People know that we need to love one another. There's nothing new there.
Right.
But it's just kind of like just taking that moment and say, hey, let's just look over here for a minute. We look to Christ, and then what is he calling us to do? And this is just another way of just living, having him live his life through us to others, and just living out one another's.
Yep. I'm glad you used that reference. You might be hanging out with Mike Lukens, our pastor of worship, because he'll say the exact same thing. I mean, every weekend is meant to be a reminder where we just take our heads and take them off of ourselves and just look up and point to Christ.
Amen.
Yeah. Well, thank you for you and your team, again, praying through this a year and a half ago to bring us to this point to where it has been impactful. And then going back, and if you haven't listened to the different episodes here on this podcast, go back. They're labeled, they're titled. You can see how there's different themes that are going through each story. Getting a chance to hear others and hear their stories and hear testimonies, I think is encouraging to know what God is doing in the lives of people here at our church. Well, Lynch's, once again, thank you for being here, having us listen to your story. And guys, go to Follow the Star, invite somebody, point them to the website, fbcva.org/follow the star. Or if you just go to our .life site, it's right there in the front homepage, and click on that, and that'll take you to information about Follow the Star. You can see it on Facebook, all kinds of things. But that's coming up December 4th and 5th. Get your cars, get your caravans, get your buses, get in there to see those animals and show people the gospel through what is being presented in the parking lot of Fellowship Bible Church. John, thanks again for you being here.
Thank you.
And keep watching and listening. There'll be more episodes to come. I think we'll be taking a break on this podcast for the next couple of weeks. So if you don't hear from us soon, have a great Christmas season as well, and we'll be kicking off with more testimonies from people here at Fellowship Bible Church next year. So until we chat again, let's let Christ be the focus of our life each and every day.